This week, we're going to begin to talk about argument. And in argumentative writing, a writer will take a stance or a position, usually on a controversial topic or a topic that is controversial or unsettled and particular to the field of study that the writer is an expert in or that the writer is studying. Once the writer takes a position, he or she will then support that position with facts, examples, statistics, and of course, his or her own commentary that discusses how it is the support is relevant or connected to the thesis statement. Thesis statement in argumentative writing is sometimes called a claim or a position statement, as it is the sentence that articulates what the writer's opinion is. Your next essay assignment is going to be a longer researched argument, and you'll learn more about that assignment next week. This week, however, we're going to take a look at a couple of examples. We're going to take a look at a professional writing example that comes from the pages of the New York Times, and we're in a separate video, we're going to take a look at a student example that comes from your Rules for Writers textbook. What you're looking at in front of you is an opinion piece or an editorial article that was published in the New York Times recently. The title is What Fans of Herd Immunity Don't Tell You, and it's going to be connected to the topic of coronavirus. I'm going to read through the introduction, and then we're going to talk about how the introduction is structured, because I think this gives a good example of how to proceed in organizing a argumentative essay. As I read it, I want you to see if you can find yourself the hook of the introduction, the background of the introduction, and see if you can identify the thesis or claim statement of the introduction as well. Right? So, What Fans of Herd Immunity Don't Tell You. It's written by John M. Barry, who is the author of a book called The Great Influenza, the story of the deadliest pandemic in history. And it was published recently, October 19th, 2020. No matter what their politics, people nearly always listen to those who say what they want to hear. Hence, it's no surprise that the White House and several governors are now paying close attention to the Great Barrington Declaration, a proposal written by a group of well-credentialed scientists who want to shift COVID-19 policy towards achieving herd immunity, the point at which enough people have become immune to the virus that its spread becomes unlikely. They would like to do this by allowing, quote, those who are at minimal risk of death to live their lives normally. This way, they will allow people to, quote, build up immunity to the virus through natural infection while better protecting those who are at the highest risk. We call this focused protection. These academics are clearly a distinct minority. Most of their public health colleagues have condemned their proposal as unworkable and unethical, even as amounting to mass murder, as William Hastelin, a former Harvard Medical School professor who now heads the Global Health Foundation, put it to CNN last week. But who is right? The signers of the declaration do have a point. Restrictions are designed to limit deaths cause real harm, including, but by no means limited to, stress on the economy, increases in domestic violence, and drug abuse, declines in tests that screen for cancer, and so on. Those living alone suffer real pain from isolation, and the young have every reason to feel bitter over the loss of substantive education and what should have been memories of high school prom or the bonding friendships that form in a college dorm at 2 a.m., or on an athletic team, or in some other endeavor. So the idea of returning to something akin to normal, releasing everyone from a kind of jail, is attractive, even seductive. It becomes less seductive when one examines three enormously important omissions of that declaration. And so there's our introduction. And what the writer does is we begin with this interesting hook statement. It's this first paragraph right here. No matter what their politics, people nearly always listen to those who say what they want to hear. The writer then immediately gets into a little bit of background information where he establishes the context of the moment that we're living in. If you think back to some of the earlier classes that we've had, where we've talked about audience, purpose, and occasion, how that makes up the rhetorical situation. In this case, the writer is establishing the rhetorical situation, the occasion of the writing, right? What's happening now. And when he does that by helping us understand the different parties that are part of this discussion or that are part of this debate. And he introduces the idea that there are some people, these scientists who wrote this great Barrington report, who believe that we should just not do lockdowns, we should not worry about wearing masks, that people who are not at risk of dying from the disease should just go out and get it. Kind of like how when you were a little kid, your parents maybe made you be exposed to chickenpox from a sibling or from a friend or a cousin, so that you would just be done with it. The writer then goes on to contrast that idea with some other scientists, right? Scientists who are in the majority who say, actually that's kind of a bad idea. And then he asks the question, who is right, which continues the hook and explains what's at stake in this situation, right? Why might people want to agree with these scientists who say, let's just go for herd immunity? All of this is really background information. And we arrive at the thesis in this paragraph here. And the thesis sentence tells us that this writer doesn't really agree with this idea of herd immunity. The way we know that is that he states, herd immunity, the idea of herd immunity, becomes less seductive when one examines three enormously important omissions in the declaration, right? Three important things that are left out. And then he's going to go on to outline those three important things. And the rest of the essay, he's going to elaborate on them. So we get the three main points here. One, first, second, third. And then the rest of the essay, or the editorial, is going to use facts and statistics that help him prove that those 3 points are in fact true. While this is not a traditional organization for an academic essay, it's an excellent example of how to organize an introduction for an editorial or an argument that might be part of popular discourse. The research that is part of the article is also significant support, and it uses a blend of fact, statistic examples, as well as the author's own explanations of how those things support the claim that herd immunity is actually not beneficial. As you read the rest of the article, I want you to look for those facts, statistics, and examples, and pay special attention to the way that the writer supports his ideas. In this week's discussion board post, you're going to be asked to comment on the article, so be aware of that as well.